I think the point of today's homily is, in a world gone wrong, and our world has gone wrong, that's the world we live in, authentic Catholics, authentic prophets, authentic religious people will face opposition. That's just the way it is. It's out of necessity. It's almost required. And so this opposition, I don't want you to think just in terms of you trying to speak the truth to people and them opposing you. That'll happen, and that's what we're talking about. But I want you to think about how you, in your own heart, might be in opposition to something Christ wants to speak in the world today. Because if you're part of our world, there's something about the good news of our Lord Jesus Christ that even you might be in opposition to in your heart. You might find it difficult. And so, more than challenging someone you disagree with today, would you be willing to open up your own heart and let the great prophet challenge you, make you uncomfortable, make you feel like this is difficult. This isn't easy for me to hear, because prophets are not easy to hear. And if you think of John the Baptist, they're not easy to look at either. They look prophetic, they look wild, they look tough. And so Jeremiah is a great prophet, and in Luke, Jesus is the great prophet. And they both faced deadly opposition. And so what we want to do is really put to death in us those things that are in opposition to Christ. And if we're to be prophetic, to really accept this, we're going to have to do that world. Life is difficult. And so Jesus says, I came to set the world ablaze. I came to cast fire onto the earth, is what he says, literally in the Greek. I came to really burn off all that underbrush so that something new can start to grow. And what Jesus is doing isn't like anything anyone in this world is doing. And so let's quit following the people in this world. Let's keep our eyes, like Hebrews says, focused on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Let's just give up everything else and follow Jesus. Then we could be authentic in our religion. And so he wants to set it ablaze, to burn off everything, all this underbrush, and to grow a whole new growth. God's doing a whole new wonderful work. There's a comic called Calvin and Hobbes. And when my one son was really little, his room was filled with Calvin and Hobbes comics. He loved it, absolutely loved it. And in one of those comics, Calvin is sitting underneath a sign that says, kick in the butt, $1. Yeah, kick in the butt, $1. And so finally, Calvin, who's a little boy, and his friend Hobbes is like this tiger, and he's a play friend of his. And so Hobbes comes and says, well, how's business? And Calvin says, it's horrible, and I don't understand why. Because most people in this world need a good kick in the butt, right? And so today the readings give us a good kick in the butt. Be open to it, because we need to be open to that kind of prophetic message in our lives, so that we can then be the salt of the earth and take that message out to our world. Chrysostom, I was reading the Office of Readings for Sunday because I thought it might have something to do with today's message, so I jumped ahead in prayer. And he said, this world is miserable, and you are the salt of this world. And he said, salt doesn't work on rotten stuff. It's already gone. It's already rotten. Salt works on good stuff to keep it from going rotten. And so he's talking about what our presence is. We're not here to kind of revive the rotten. We're here to let that work of Christ, that fire of Christ, do that totally renewing of people, that totally them dying in baptism to this world, being raised in the newness of Christ to a whole new life. Then we can be the salt to people who are willing to do that, to go through that kind of work. And so I guess the message is authentic religion is always opposed. And mostly I want you to think not of your enemies, but think about your own heart and how hard it is to hear some things that the church teaches. So we know Jeremiah, all he said was, he spoke prophetically, Babylon was attacking Jerusalem. And he told the people, you have to surrender to Babylon if you want to be saved. Otherwise, you're going to be utterly destroyed. And in fact, that was true. Babylon came in and just utterly took over. And the people said, he's not for the people. He's trying to ruin the people. And they threw him in a cistern that was all muddy, and he sank in the mud. Prophet. He went from that prophet status. How many think being a prophet has a prestige about it, or kind of like some popularity about it? Well, just so you know, true prophets end up in the very lowest position. They end up in the cistern, in the mud, okay? So Jesus says, if you want to be the greatest, you're going to have to become the least. You're going to have to humble yourself. You're going to have to become even the servant of the very least. And so that position, if you want to be prophetic, you have to consider having a humble place in this world so you can speak to places that are in power, or who want to be, or who want to manipulate and control this world. And so Jeremiah was that. And the same is true of Jesus. The second reading said, look how much he suffered at the hands of sinners because he was prophetic. And he suffered even to death. And then Hebrews says, you haven't suffered to the point of death yet, so don't get discouraged. Be encouraged. You're still here. And as long as you're still here, be prophetic. And what about our world? Has things changed from Jeremiah to Jesus' time to our time? If you're prophetic in our day, do you think you'll be popular? Or do you think you'll be this high prestige and that sort of thing? Fat chance. Not at all. Our world too has gone wrong. And so if you speak, let's just say, the teachings of the Catholic Church prophetically today, if I was to speak the primary teachings of the Catholic Church that are out there in our world right now today, you would all leave. I wouldn't even have a church left. You'd all get mad at me and say, no, I'm in opposition to that. Well, be careful, because authentic religion always have opposition. So if I was to preach against abortion, if I was to preach against euthanasia, and if I was to preach the gospel of life, that would be offensive to some. They would be in opposition to that. But consider, let me go a little further now, because some of you say, Father, do that more, okay? But if I was to preach on behalf of the poor, if I was to preach on behalf of the sick, if I was to preach on behalf of the marginalized, if I was to preach on behalf of capital punishment, doing away with capital punishment, the other half of you would all get in opposition to me and get up and leave. Because these are political issues today. And today, people are political to the point of they have no salt, no ability to be prophetic in the world, because they either just take this part of the Catholic teaching or this part of the Catholic teaching, and they go to the right or they go to the left. But nobody's willing to be challenged and kicked in the butt, if you will, by this great prophet, Jesus Christ, who teaches us to do all these things. We're not right-wingers, we're not left-wingers, we're not conservative, we're not liberal, we're Catholics. We're followers of our Lord Jesus Christ. And if you're talking politics to someone who agrees with your political party, and they just love everything you say, yeah, where's the opposition? And if no matter which political party you're in, you're not being prophetic to the political stance of the people who agree with you. You're just being political. Jesus got killed for his stance against this group and against that group. So Jeremiah, he got thrown in the cistern. We're called to be the salt of the earth, to really make a difference in our world, to really change everything. There's one guy wrote a book, and he started the book with the words, "Life is difficult." Okay, everyone knows that, right? But then, this is M. Scott Peck, I think. I can't remember who wrote this book. Maybe it was the other. Oh, anyways. But then he says real quickly, but for those who know that, life isn't difficult anymore. It's those who think life should not be difficult who find life to be very difficult. If we think we shouldn't be facing opposition, then we'll be upset with it, and we'll think it shouldn't be this way. I should be able to preach prophetically in the church, and I shouldn't face any opposition. Wrong. Exactly wrong. For me to challenge every single person here in the church today prophetically is what I'm called to do. And to be willing to face opposition because of it, well, I'm in a good tradition doing that. That's what we are calling people to today. This difficult life where in being true to truth itself, we're willing to challenge people who would otherwise agree with us. If we're on the one side, the side of life, are we also on the side of the poor and the immigrant and that sort of thing? If we're on the side of the poor and the immigrant, are we on the side of life, of the little ones, unborn? Are we truly Catholic? Are we truly in the tradition of our Lord Jesus Christ? If you disagree with me, yay, maybe I spoke prophetically. I hope at least half of you are opposed to something I said, because we only spoke what the church teaches, what Jesus teaches, and what you're called to follow, what you're called to take up your cross and be part of this great movement of our Lord Jesus Christ. This is our prophetic faith. It challenges us. It has to, or we're not listening. We're not open. And what a wonderful challenge. I think the readings are horrible today. So let's just say, what a wonderful challenge God puts on us. And what a wonderful, wonderful faith we have.